let's introduce Deborah Hellwig. Deborah, say hello to the audience.
Hello, audience.
Glad to have you here. She is the Senior Internal Communications Manager at Keiko Isom.
Isom. Right.
I knew I was going to have a mistake in there. You got to throw one in once in a while. So thank you. And also here is Lorraine Lee. Lorraine, hi there. Good to see you. She's the editorial director at Prezi. So what we're really going to talk about here today are some new tools, strategies, tactics to really re-engage your audiences. And by audiences, I noticed a lot of our audience members today are internal communication professionals.
Yes.
There are some external comms professionals here as well. Yes, Deborah's forte right there. But we're going to bridge the gap between the two, and at the end talk a little bit about tools that help with mixternal, which is one of Ragan's favorite phrases. It's internal comms working more closely with external, and sometimes you end up doing the same job. I think an okay place to start here to kick this off a little bit. I love the overlay there, Lorraine. It looks wonderful. Let's focus on you. You talk quite a bit in other events and internally as well about beating Zoom fatigue. That's what we're doing here today. We hope. I'm trying to keep it lively and fast-paced. So how can we all be a little more engaged in our Zooms? How can we create more collaborative hybrid meetings? And actually, what the heck is a hybrid meeting?
Yeah, so that is the million-dollar question, Brian, beating Zoom fatigue. So I'll start off with the definition of a hybrid meeting. So hybrid meeting describes a meeting that has both in-person attendees as well as at least one virtual attendee. So it's the hybrid of the two coming together. When it comes to beating Zoom fatigue, the first thing I want to say, which I say all the time in my virtual keynote about this topic, is that we're not actually tired of video. We are consuming more and more of it. The cause for Zoom fatigue is that the videos that we're watching and the meetings we're part of are just really boring and not created for the medium specifically. So when you start looking at video meetings through this lens, you start looking at Zoom through this lens, you can start thinking a little bit differently about how you're approaching your video meetings instead of accepting them as a dreaded evil. And at Prezi, we've had the opportunity to partner closely with companies like WebEx and Zoom to create these new experiences for virtual presentations and meetings. And one of the things that we're seeing is that meetings in their current state are way too much about one person talking to a group of people versus an actual conversation interaction with everyone who's in the room. So I have a couple of suggestions for how we could fix that. The first is to leverage async video. Async videos are wonderful because it gives context ahead of a meeting. It allows for people to watch the video at a time that works for them. They can even watch it at a faster speed if they want to. And then you use the actual meeting for discussion and brainstorming. And the benefit of this is that—
Lorraine, can you define async video?
Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry about that. So async communications is communication that's not dependent on time. So things like Slack, for example, you expect an immediate response, but async is things like email, again, sending a pre-recorded video. So you're not expecting a response right away, and it's a lot more flexible in terms of when you can get back to someone.
Got it. Sorry to step on your line.
Oh, no worries. Always good to, define the jargon. And so, so the benefit of async and when people can be flexible when they're watching videos is that it leads to better employee well-being and often a shorter live meeting. The second tip I have ties a bit into a tool. So Brian, you can use features like Prezi's on-screen responses or Slido's live polls to create different state changes that break up your meeting and require participants to do more than tune in and listen passively. Zoom fatigue happens because we're just sitting there and someone's talking to us and they're not really asking anything of us. So when you can actually get people participating, doing something besides just sitting there, breaking it up with videos or questions or activities, for better or worse, we have to work harder to get people's attention on video, and creating these state changes are a great way to do that. And then one more tip around presentations and content. Your bulleted deck that you created for an in-person audience that you're now screen sharing just really isn't going to cut it anymore. You really have to understand the medium that you're working with and find ways to leverage it to its full potential.
No more bullets. But we definitely are about service journalism here and getting what the takeaway tips are. But audience, we don't have polls for you at this point, but please do get your questions in here. Jump right in. Don't wait for me to ask for a clarification on a term, for example, that Lorraine throws out. Great tips, Lorraine. Audience, get questions in here, comments. Great job, Lorraine. Say, Lorraine, I'd like to know more about X, Y, or Z. But Deborah,
Yes.
what do you think about what Lorraine had to say? And how are you getting around that? What are you doing to inspire and engage your employees?
Well, I mean, Lorraine's got it dead right. Certainly, we use a lot of async communications. We do a lot of pre-video and a lot of sort of infographics that we'll send ahead of time. We also make judicious use of both breakout rooms and polling tools to hit Lorraine's point of getting people engaged and active in the conversation. We will oftentimes divide meetings where we'll do a bigger meeting where we're going to hit on some major content, but then we'll actually schedule 10-minute stand-ups later in the afternoon with various groups to try to get them engaged on a particular topic, and then do some report back through infographic or through email to try to share back what everybody reported back and what they learned. So it's taking it in bite sizes, certainly reducing the length of time that we're putting people in a room to listen to content. And making sure that our speakers are doing a better job of addressing the audience that's on the call. So we had a real big issue with leader comms when we were doing our all hands, talking to sort of the other leaders in the room, and I'm really hammering home, no, you've got to really talk to every person that's sitting here and give them a why they're here, and give them content that's going to be meaningful for them. So really doing some leader coaching as well to make sure that these Zoom meetings are going to be truly beneficial for every person that's involved.
Love it. Speaking to the audience, Cecilia, we're right in your wheelhouse here. So if you have any specific questions, and we will get into some tools here in a moment. And Rob, I see your comment. I'll throw it out there in a second. But let's stay a little more on Deborah and the tech that actually achieve some of the strategies that you just shared. I'm trying to get some alliteration in here. Unpack your tech stack for us.
Unpack the tech stack. Okay. Well, here's the interesting thing about me. Okay. Keiko ISOM is a top 100 accounting firm. We're about 75 million in revenue, about 425 employees in 10 states, and 14 more states of remote employees. So we're very distributed, but very small. Our budgets are not big. So everything you saw in the agenda as part of my tech stack is inexpensive or free. You can do a lot with not a lot of money. And that's not to say that there aren't fabulous tools out there, and I could name a lot of them that are big dollar that will basically, make your omelet for you. But if you don't have that kind of budget, there are many, many ways to accomplish what you need to do. We use Mango Apps as our intranet. I have to put a plug in for them. They are a fabulous platform that really accomplishes a whole lot for us, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody about that. But then the other stuff we're using, Prezi, Canva, Constant Contact, Camtasia, very inexpensive, basic tools that provide us with a lot of flexibility to address what we need. And the piece that I would say about that too, that I think is kind of important, is from when you're thinking about this from the point of view of internal comm, a lot of people will come to you and say, what tools are you going to use to solve this problem? And you really have to flip that script and go, what are we trying to accomplish with this communication or this event that we're trying to do? And then what tools do I already have in my stack that might help me accomplish that without me having to go spend more money or buy something that's super spiffy? And to do that, having a great relationship with the vendors that you're already working with, and be able to say, hey, does your tool do this thing or that thing? You would be surprised how much is available to you. Like if you were using Prezi, you might not know about Prezi Video, right? And there's this whole other piece to their platform that you can apply and use, and that's really cool. And then there's always training available online. There's forums like this through Ragan where you can get ideas from your peers. There's a lot of ways you can apply that tech.
Let's stay on you and each one of those tools. And I'm saying that because, well, thank you, Nicole, for clarifying. Yes, Camtasia. Let's go back to some of the tools you mentioned. Just do a quick definition and how it's working for you. And I have an idea. Karen, I see your question. What type of visuals does Lorraine suggests, besides bulleted PowerPoint slides, she's going to get to that. I promise. She has some ideas. She has one tool in particular that's already been mentioned multiple times here today. She'll dig into.
Yep.
So back to you, Deborah. Tool.
Sure.
The first one, tell everyone what, I know what Camtasia is, but real quick, what do you use Camtasia for?
Okay, so I'm just going to start at the top of my stack and work
Great,
down.
let's do that.
That's okay with you. So Mango Apps is an intranet platform. It's a software as a service. It basically cooks your dinner for you. It's got a rewards and recognition system and a learning management system built in addition to a whole lot of other stuff. It's a great platform, definitely worth investigating if you're looking for a single source of truth for your employees to be able to get access to data. Adobe Suite, everybody knows Adobe Suite. If you've got anybody with any basic graphic design skills, you can use Adobe 1,000 different ways, and we use a lot of their tools to manage graphics and video. Articulate 360 is a platform we started using in the last year. It's really a learning and development platform. It's designed to do short form training, but it's very, very WYSIWYG, and we use it a lot on the internal comm side to create tutorials and how-tos and quick training, like burst training for people in a lot of areas. And it's been very successful. It's very user-friendly and very WYSIWYG. Canva is a graphic platform. Again, it's very inexpensive, super cheap, like 120 bucks a year for a subscription, and enormous graphics library, the ability to flip out infographics and stuff for your intranet really, really fast, and love that platform. Constant Contact is our choice for email and tracking an email. It's again, the least expensive platform out there, but it does what it says on the tin, and it's not hard to use and gets us the results we need. We use ClickUp as our software for project management and have had great success with that. We use a tool called RoadMonk for strategy mapping and sort of setting our goals on the quarterly and monthly basis so we can have a really good look at what we're attempting to accomplish. Dropbox, can't say enough great stuff about Dropbox, all access to files everywhere. Prezi for presentations, love Prezi, got lots of great stuff that Lorraine will show you. We transfer easy photo stuff back and forth with people that are off site, Photor, photo editing, and there's a lot more other tools that we use, but those are the high level ones that I would choose to share.
And there's a lot there. Audience, you will be getting a recording for this entire event, so don't worry if you can't quite keep up. Just absorb and roll with the conversation and ask questions, and you can reference some of these tools later on. You mentioned project management. Anyone using Trello for project management? Audience, anyone using Trello? Okay, we'll move on. Audience member Fiona asked Photor. Is it F-O-T-O-R?
F-O-T-O-R. It is a free little software online that you can use to really quickly crop, edit, manage photos. You can do that sort of stuff in Canva as well. But you can go out and set up stuff in Photor that's really, really quick. And it can just help you move stuff along. Brian, I can get you that list for you to share out with all the people. So don't worry, guys, if you didn't catch me going, I'll be glad to type that up and get that over to him.
Today is largely panel conversations, not presentations. Lorraine has a slight wrinkle to that momentarily. How do you integrate? Are you having challenges integrating all of these different tools into your stack?
No, and part of that is because, like I said, we're a small shop. It's me and one coordinator. My gig is writing mostly, and so I was never like a big software person. So we've chosen stuff that's very, very simple to use. Everything we've got has great tutorials. It's all very WYSIWYG, and it's one of those things where you just go, oh, well, wait, I need to do this. Oh, this tool we have will manage that for me. So again, we always approach it in our shop from flipping that script and not what tools do we have to do a thing. It's what do we need to do? And, oh, okay, we'll use this tool to accomplish that. Does that help?
It does. And I see the comments, audience, about the list of tools. I will be providing that in your bonus materials from all of our speakers. You will be getting that when you get the survey after the event. It's something you can read and download after the fact. Question came in from Rob earlier, and I do see comments coming in about Slido, but Prezi Video does that and so much more we'll get into momentarily. But let's go with Rob's question. Lorraine touched on hybrid meetings. We found historically that in hybrid meetings, those attending virtually tend to be less engaged. harder to get their input heard. Folks in the room tend to dominate. Suggestions to solve for that.
Yes, I have one.
Yeah.
So I think and I was going to talk about this later, but the biggest tip I would give is that if one person is dialing into the call, everyone should be dialing into the call. So if you want to stay in person with your in-person attendees and they all want to be in the same room, everyone should have their laptops open and just have one mic or speaker in the center of the table, or everyone takes a call from their desk or goes into their own separate rooms. I think having that equal playing field where everyone's on their laptop already will get rid of 95% of the problems that you're experiencing. The other thing I would say is that you need to define rules of engagement. So ahead of the meeting, do you want people raising their hands, both in person or using the virtual platform? So to be able to just make that very clear how you want people to participate is important. Otherwise, to your point, everyone's going to be running rampant and just doing whatever it is that they want to do.
We manage that in our firm a couple of different ways. First, it's all about leader engagement. The person who is in charge of that meeting owns the responsibility for keeping those remote people engaged. And if it's only one person, we will often take an extra laptop and open it at the table in a place where a person is sitting, so that face is physically in the space rather than on a wall or someplace far away. So it feels a little bit more like they're in the room. Now, if you've got multiple, that's a little bit different, but it really is incumbent on the leader who's responsible and who's running that agenda to be looking to that virtual group and addressing them. And if possible, if there's going to be a whole lot of comment and you're going to use chat for that, to have somebody whose responsibility in the room, whose responsibility it is to monitor that chat, to engage with the people in the chat, and to make sure that they're staying engaged. Hope that helps.
Speaking of engaging people in the chat, we're juggling back and forth between Q&A and chat. And this is on leadership too. It's why I went back and cherry picked this. Jackson's question was, I think you touched on it. What do you do when people, leaders, don't really know what they want to accomplish? They just want to do something / do it. And they get frustrated when you're asking those tough questions.
They just, in other words, we just need to have a meeting.
We just need to have a meeting. And it probably stems from fear or concern of lack of constant contact with teams or engagement. So how do you address that?
This is where you have to do what Brene Brown calls being brave and tell them no. and I'm really very, very serious about that. I challenge my leaders quite frequently to say, if we don't, what you are doing by having a meeting without a purpose is you are losing credibility.
That is right. So everything comes back to purpose. Last year, I like to call the year of purpose. But all of us are communicators and marketers. Any initiative, any campaign, and any meeting, now it can be informal, but you need to start with what's my goal? What's the purpose? How am I going to execute on that? And how am I going to measure what are the metrics and the KPIs that I can track with regard to engagement? It's as simple as that. You can't just have a meeting for meeting's sake.
But at the same time, I will also say, Brian, that you can find a good reason to have a meeting if your leaders are willing to engage with you and have the conversation. Because if they're saying we need to have a meeting, there's a fear in them that needs to be addressed. And if you can talk to them through, what are you actually concerned about? What issue are you trying to solve? You can probably come to something that will create a reason for you to get people together, even if it's a celebratory reason. There are ways and ways.
Teresa's point is amazing. Be the strategic consultant or communicator on the team. Ask questions.
Correct.
Push back by asking questions, and that makes them think about the executables. I haven't read this one through, so bear with me. From Nicole, do either of you have data points on how async comms or making Zoom meetings more interactive has improved an area of the business that can be shared with leadership? Demonstrate the value behind shifting to these new ways of communicating. Basically looking for data proof points, anecdotal examples possibly for today's panel on how making a meeting more interactive has driven results positively from an
well, certainly I think you can go back if you're sending out an async comm like a video in advance, you certainly can go back to leadership and go, okay, prior to the meeting we've had 80% of the firm view your video. So you know you're coming in a different place with your conversation, and you can drive the conversation in a different direction. Is that, and that's certainly helpful because it shortens the meeting, which is something that really, I think you can go out and find data in any source to show that shorter meetings are going to be better attended and people are going to engage better. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind. But in terms of, and then I guess if you take a look at our post-meeting surveys, what did you find this meeting a valuable use of your time? I think you can show those, you can use those numbers to show how that would be helping you as well.
Great. I'm going to ask you, Deborah, we didn't talk about this before, but if you'd like, we'd come back to illustrate as kind of a case study, any diversity, equity, inclusion, or ERGs that you have around inclusive issues and at your organization, how you pull the teams together or don't. And if you have a better case study, share that with me, and then I'll kind of extract some tips from that. But before we get there, someone asked a simple one. What kind of infographics have you seen success with?
I feel like I'm talking a lot. Lorraine, do you have stuff you want to share on that?
Sure. I mean, I'm not personally using infographics that often, but I can say like one thing that we've seen success with when you're showing a lot of data or just a lot of information on the screen is with Prezi Video, you can put your content on the screen. It can be semi-transparent, as you can see here, and pointing through charts and talking through your information that way. We've seen definitely has increased engagement than if you were just screen sharing or sending the infographic separately. It's really the combination of content and person and being able to walk people through it.
Yeah, with gestures like you just used. And she's going to be coming back to that, to Karen, an anonymous attendee's question. She's going to walk us through a few tips when we close out here within about 3 to 5 minutes. Deborah, did you get cut off? Did I cut you off?
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say is that the thing I have used infographics for that has been so helpful for my company is sort of helping people step through thought processes and step through processes. So if a lot of if then, so when we did one for navigating busy season, if I have this work, I do this, and then I do this, and then I do that, and then helping people with decision trees and how to navigate and how to do. It's something that we have seen tremendous success for, because people have sometimes a hard time visualizing how to make choices about the work that's in front of them, and particularly in a virtual environment, right? Because we're not all in the same room. We can't whiteboard together as effectively as we might have done. So having some of that set out in an infographic way, this is how you can think about that, and then use that as a catalyst to drive conversation, and then more effective whiteboarding in a Zoom meeting, say, is something we've done with great success.
Love it. I'll underscore that the most effective infographics, and what really seems to fit the medium, is a journey, a beginning and an end, a problem, a solution, a hero's journey, a solve. So what you just iterated indicates that. You just don't want to throw a bunch of data on a chart. There are a lot of tools out there that you can do that, and they think they're infographics, but they're faux landing pages. So keep that in mind. Genoa's question was earlier. I think it was the async comms video question. How short, how long is too long for those videos?
I mean, what have we said about video since the dawn of time, right? 3 minutes is what you go for. We have, however, in our firm, in lieu of having the big meeting, we've taken to doing what we're calling the Jeff Talk. Jeff Wald is our CEO, and he will do a 15-minute stand-up, and we treat it like a TED Talk. We figure a TED Talk is 18 minutes. They can hold an audience for that long. So if we're going to do it as a long form like that, we will advertise it that way. This is a TED Talk style, and we'll go up to 18 minutes. For anything that's normally like just sending out video before a meeting, we try for 3, we won't go over 4. And if we can do less, it's even better.
There's a few more things we want to touch on. And audience, I want everyone to be aware that there will be a break at the top of the hour for 10 minutes. So I can bleed into that time a little bit for all of us. I just want you to know what's coming. But I can try to read your minds as much as possible. But much cooler is if you drop your questions and your comments in chat or the Q&A so we can address your specific needs. Otherwise, I'm guessing. So please keep the questions coming in. So Deborah, anything cool that our audience can help you with? Anything that you're thinking of trying or that you'd like the audience to chime in?
You know there is, Brian, you know there is.
We don't
I
prepare
am,
for these at all.
Yeah, no, I am actually, we're moving on the road of diversity, equity, and inclusion. As we all know, this is a journey. But one of the things from an internal comm perspective that I'm excited about exploring is something very akin to a project called StoryCorps, StoryCorps, if you're not familiar with it. I'm not sure where that generated. It may have been an NPR project, but what it is there are listening stations in many public places all over the country, like Grand Central Station in New York, where you literally can walk in and sit down and there's recording equipment and you sit down, you tell your story, you get up and you leave. And it's becoming part of a social history archive for the United States. And they share these quite often in PR and in other venues. I want to set up a StoryCorps listening station in my own firm, where we can, from one click of the intranet, allow our people to go to a place where they can tell their story around diversity, equity, and inclusion, around something great that's happened to them as being part of the Keiko family. And I'm looking for tools that will make that easier than doing selfie video and then having to figure out how to upload it and send it to Deborah. I'm looking to create an environment like StoryCorps where it's very seamless for the employee to be able to share that. And so far, I have not found the tool. So I'm going to throw that out there to the hive mind and say, does anybody have any ideas about how to approach that?
And there are a lot of you out there. Don't be shy. Jump in. What tools are you using that you can, I like to call it ECG, EGC, employee generated content, like UGC. We need more of that. That's a way to engage employees, not even just around issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Are there any tools that any of you are using that to gather, collate, pull into one place your employee stories? Let us know. I feel that Deborah has helped us and helped you. It's our turn to help her. Yammer, workplace.
Okay. All right, cool.
Anyone else? We'll give it a minute. I think it's a great idea and we need more of that in more organizations now. SharePoint makes sense.
Yep. All right, thanks, gang.
First up.
Okay.
So we're going to make sure to gather, my colleague Mariah, we need to make sure we gather the chat here after the fact so I can go through and put all of these tools in the list for our audience. A few people are using First Up.
All right.
All right, so let's jump to Lorraine. You had indicated you had some closing. Thank you, Deborah. Great insights. And as you see the list coming in here, I'll share it with you after the fact as well, not just the audience. You have some takeaway tips that you want to share on engaging people in meetings.
Yes.
And I was going to do a thumbs up earlier, but the Zoom thumbs up is quite frankly pathetic compared to some things that you can show us. So go ahead.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for all your questions. As Brian mentioned, I'm going to be sharing 5 tips for making your virtual and hybrid meetings more engaging, more productive, and more collaborative. So the first tip here, which we touched on earlier, is if one person is dialing in, I really recommend that everyone should be dialing in as well. This is one of the easiest changes that you can make. It's going to fix most of the issues that workers are having right now with their hybrid meetings and feeling like it's an unequal experience. So I mentioned before, if there's a group in person who wants to stay in the same room, just put one microphone in the middle of the table so there's no sound feedback, or ideally they're at their desks or in their own separate rooms as well. The second tip is to make sure that you are inclusive of all personalities, especially if you're an introvert. Figuring out when to unmute and when to talk, and you're reading the chat and you're also trying to listen to what people are saying, can be really overwhelming. So when you take advantage of new tools like Prezi's on-screen responses, or maybe you're using Slido's live polling or quizzes that promote nonverbal participation, it does give everyone a voice and you get much better ideas and collaboration with that. One thing to note here, which Deborah, you touched on earlier when it comes to leaders and facilitators of meetings, is that it's really important that they play a role in supporting this nonverbal communication aspect by doing things like calling out when they see someone's on-screen responses or they see someone chiming in on the chat. So I'm really excited about this. This is a really new and exciting way of thinking about meeting participation, and I'm really excited to see how collaboration is going to improve when you can include more voices. The third tip is to get specific with your agenda. And again, we touched on this earlier today. How many of us have joined a meeting where all the information we're given ahead of time is, I'd like to figure out how to approach this project. It's really vague, it's going to waste a lot of time, and the conversation can and will go in a lot of different directions. So when you can get very specific, with your agenda, with your goals, it gives everyone a North Star for what you're working towards and what you want to achieve, helps you keep the meeting on track, and it helps everyone focus. This next tip here is to make sure that you are priming with power words. Power words have a psychological effect on us, both in positive and negative ways, depending on the words you use. So power words, as you can guess, are words that are a little bit more, have more energy behind them. They're more dramatic, I guess you could say, and not just kind of neutral sounding words. So here's an example of an invite that most of us probably see. We know what it's about, but that's pretty much it. But what if we updated it to something more like this? Now we know through this invite here that we're brainstorming, we know that it's going to be high energy, and we know what the topic is about. So if you see something like this, you're going to be walking into that meeting with a really different energy and mentality. The next tip is that the virtual experience needs to be branded. So on-screen branding and presence for companies and employees are going to be key to the digital workplace in 2022. Now that we no longer have the ability to customize our in-office workspace, there's a growing need to have a branded digital workspace because it gives everyone on the call a sense of place and it helps bring them into the experience, which encourages people to be more active on the call. And I think someone had asked about data earlier. Prezi actually did a survey recently of hybrid workers, and they revealed that on-screen presence and branding was one of the top 5 priorities they had to have better virtual meetings. And then last tip, I mentioned this earlier, but you need the right tool set. So these are just a few that I'd recommend you try as part of your hybrid and virtual work collaboration suite. Deborah mentioned a bunch of other really great ones as well. So you have Prezi Video, Figma, which is I really love for brainstorming, Slido for live call interaction, and then Atlassian as well. And I think Trello is part of Atlassian. And then if any of you are interested in trying Prezi Video, it's a free product. You can also get a free 1-month upgrade following that link there. And I will turn it back over to you, Brian.